Hey everybody, I am back with chapter 5 of Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle. I hope you had a wonderful day. I miss you guys. So I wanted to come read so we can spend a little bit of time together. Alright, so chapter 5 is called The Radish Cure. Wonder what that's about. Let's see. Up to the time of this story, Patsy was just an everyday little girl. Sometimes she was good, and sometimes she was naughty. But usually she did what her mother told her without too much fuss. But one morning, Patsy's mother filled the bathtub with nice warm water and called Patsy to come and take her bath. Patsy came into the bathroom, but when she saw the nice warm tub of water, she began to scream and yell and kick and howl like a wild animal. Naturally, her mother was quite surprised to see her little girl acting so peculiar, but she didn't say anything. She just took off Patsy's bathrobe and said, "Now, Patsy, stop all this nonsense and hop in the tub." Patsy gave a piercing shriek and ran from the bathroom, stark naked and yelling, "I won't take a bath! I won't ever take a bath! I hate baths! I hate baths! I hate baths!" Patsy's mother let the water out of the tub and went downstairs to telephone her friend and find out if their children had ever behaved in this unusual fashion, if it was catching, and what to do about it. First, she called Miss Brown. "Hello, Miss Brown. This is Patsy's mother, and I'm having such a time this morning. Patsy simply will not take a bath." "Pardon me just a minute, Mrs. Brown." She put down the telephone receiver and went over to Patsy, who was standing in the kitchen doorway listening to the telephone conversation and feeling very important. She was being nosy, wasn't she? Patsy said, "What did Mrs. Brown say to do with me, Mother?" Patsy's mother said, "She hasn't told me yet, but when I find out, you better march right upstairs and get dressed, and then you can pick up that messy, sticky paste you worked on and left all over your room last night. Don't come downstairs until every single thing is put away." Patsy's mother picked up the telephone and Mrs. Brown said, "I'm sorry, but I can't offer any suggestions because our little Petunia just adores her bath. Perhaps Mr. Grotto could help you." So Patsy's mother called Mrs. Grotto. She said, "Hello, Mrs. Grotto. I just called to ask you if you could help me with Patsy. She won't take a bath, and I'm at my wit's end." Mrs. Grotto said, "Well, frankly, I don't know what to suggest because our little girl simply worships her bath. Of course, she is a quite remarkable child. Why, Thursday afternoon," she said. Yes, I know," said Patsy's mother quickly. "Goodbye, Mrs. Grotto." "Thank you." Then Patsy's mother called Mrs. Broomrack. "Good morning, Mrs. Broomrack," she said too brightly. "I wonder if you'd do me a favor." "Why, of course, dear," said Mrs. Broomrack. "Well," said Patsy's mother, "this morning for the first time in her life, our little Patsy won't take a bath. The very idea seems to make her hysterical, and I don't know what to do." Mrs. Broomrack said, "Why, you poor dear, all alone in that big house with that unmanageable child. Personally, I don't know what to say because our little boy looks forward to taking a bath. Bathing is his favorite pastime. In fact, sometimes we can't get him out of the tub." "Why don't you let him stay in then?" said Patsy's mother. "Because he might drown," squealed Mrs. Broomrack. So if you look, here's a picture. And there's the mom who's worried about her little girl who won't take a bath. And here's all the kids who she's called their parents, and they will take baths. Look, this one's even reading. Must be the one who don't want to get out of the bathtub. "Well," said Patsy's mother as she hung up the phone. By this time she was feeling rather depressed because it seemed that bathing was the most popular indoor sport with every child in town but her own dirty little girl. In desperation, she decided to call Miss Piggle-Wiggle. She should know about children, thought Patsy's mother. She certainly has her house crawling with them day and night. It certainly was fortunate for Patsy's mother that she thought of Miss Piggle-Wiggle, because although Miss Piggle-Wiggle has no children of her own and lives in an upside-down house, she understands children better than anybody in the whole world. She is always ready to stop whatever she is doing and have a tea party. She is glad to have children dig worms in her petunia bed. She has a large trunk full of scraps for doll cloths and another trunk full of valuable rocks with gold in them. She is delighted to have the children pick up and look at all the little things which she keeps on her table. And when Hubert Prentice dropped the glass ball that snowed on the children, when you shook it, he said, "Heavens, Hubert, don't cry. I'm so glad this happened. For years and years I have wanted to know what was in that glass ball. Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle takes it for granted that you will want to try on her shoes and go wiggling around on high heels." Which is probably why she was not surprised when Patsy's mother told her about the bath. "I suppose we all come to it sooner or later," she said. "Well, from my experience, I would say that the radish cure is probably the quickest and most lasting." "The radish cure?" said Patsy's mother. "Yes," said Miss Piggle-Wiggle, "the radish cure is just what Patsy needs. All you have to do is buy one package of radish seeds." Radishes are those, it's a vegetable. It's kind of got a little hot taste to it. The small red round ones are the best. And don't get the long white icicle type. Then let Patsy strictly alone as far as washing is concerned for several weeks. When she is about a half an inch of rich black dirt all over her head, and after she is asleep at night, scattered radish seeds on her arms and her head. So they're going to plant the seeds on Patsy. Press them gently and then wait. I don't think you'll have to water them because we are in rainy season now. She'll probably go outside now and then. And when the little radish plants have 3 leaves, you may begin pulling the largest ones. She's going to pull the radishes off of her daughter. Oh yes, Patsy will probably look quite horrible before the radish cure is over. So if you find that she is scaring too many people or her father objects to having her around, let me know and I'll be glad to keep her over here. You see, all of my visitors are children, and dirt doesn't scare me." Patsy's mother thanked Miss Piggle-Wiggle very, very much for her kind advice, and then called Patsy's father and told him to be sure to bring home a package of radish seeds. Early Red Globe, she thought they were called. The next morning, she didn't say a single word to Patsy about the bath, so Patsy was sweet and didn't act like a wild animal. And the next day was the same, and so was the next. And when Sunday came, Patsy was rather darkish, blackish, gray color, so her mother suggested that she stay home from Sunday school. Patsy's father, who was by this time had been told of the radish cure, didn't say anything to Patsy about washing, but he winced whenever she looked at him. By the end of the 3rd week, they had to keep Patsy indoors all of the time because one morning she skipped out to get the mail, and the postman, on seeing her straggly, uncombed, dust-caked hair and the rapidly forming layer of topsoil on her face, neck, and arms, gave a terrified yell, "Ah!" and then fell down the front steps. So she scared the mailman, so now they had to keep her indoors. Patsy seemed quite happy, though. Of course, it was getting hard to tell how she felt, as her face was so caked with dirt that she couldn't smile, and she talked weird. I'm going to take a bath." That's how she talked. She also had to take teeny tiny bites of food because she couldn't open her mouth more than a crack. Naturally, her father and mother had to stop having any friends to visit, except in the evening when Patsy was in bed, and when they were not at all comfortable for fear Patsy would wake up and call, "I." Really, she meant, "Bring me a drink of water, Daddy." See, all that dirt's caked around her mouth and she can't talk well. At last, however, the day came when Patsy was ready to plant. That night, when she was asleep, her mother and father tiptoed into her room and very gently pressed radish seeds into her forehead, her arms, and the back of her hands. When they had finished, they were standing up by her bed, gazing fondly at their handiwork. Patsy's father said, "Repulsive thing, isn't she?" Ugh. Patsy's mother said, "Why, George, that's a terrible thing to say about your own child. My little girl's buried deep into that dirt, and I can't even remember what she looks like," said Patsy's father, and he stamped down the stairs. The radish cure is certainly hard on parents. Quite a few days after Patsy awoke one morning, and there on the back of her hand, in fact on the back of both of her hands and her arms and her forehead, were green leaves. Patsy tried to brush them off, but they just bent over and sprang right back up again. She jumped out of bed and ran down the stairs to the dining room where her mother and father were eating breakfast. She squealed. Her father said, "Behold, the bloom of youth." And her mother said, "George," and then jumped up briskly, went over to Patsy, and took a firm hold of one of the plants on her forehead and gave it a quick jerk. Patsy squealed, "Ah!" and her mother showed her the little red radish she had pulled. Patsy tried to pull all of them out of her arm, but her hands were so caked with dirt that they couldn't grasp the little leaves, so her mother had to pull them. When they had finished one hand and the part of the left arm, Patsy suddenly said, "I threw it back in your eye." "What'd you say?" asked her mother, busily pulling the radishes and putting them in neat little piles on the dining room table. "I want a bath," said Patsy so plainly that it cracked the mud on her left cheek. Patsy's mother said, "I think it had better be a shower." And without another word, she went in and turned on the warm water. Patsy was in the shower all that day. She used up 2 whole bars of soap, and she didn't even come out for lunch. But when her father came home for dinner, there she was, waiting for him at the door, clean, sweet, and smiling, and in her hand she had a plate of little red radishes. So Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle had them put radishes on her, and they grew, and then they had to pull them out. She couldn't even talk right. So Patsy decided it was probably best that we take our baths, right? We shouldn't fight our parents on taking a bath. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.